We are the tribe from the north, we're brave and we're bold. Defeating our rivals never gets old. Making our way to the Big Sky Conference. Watch out, 'cause here comes the silver and gold. Whoa, whoa. This is Tubbs at the club for the Vandals of Idaho.
Welcome back, Tribe from the North, Brave and Bold, to the official, unofficial podcast of your Idaho Vandals and your Vandal affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I am your host, Chris Hammond, for a little Sunday special episode. It's obviously we had some news break over the last couple of days. Joining me, we have the professor from Office Hours, Brian Martson. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing great. There's a little Easter egg in the background. Again, in case anyone notices, I'm joined by the King as well. But yeah, dude, season's over. We got a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. It's a good day to be a Vandal, guys.
And the best of all time, Alex the Boatman. How are you, Alex? Horns down.
There it is. Horns down. Horns down. I know Rico's actually a Texas fan. I'm spoiling on who's on the show. But my Mountaineers took care of business yesterday. Still bowl eligible, and then Texas is bowl eligibility. So
tough trip to
Lawrence. Tough trip to Lawrence on Saturday. That's all I'm worried about. Kansas is no pushover.
You guys might have made a certain co-defensive coordinator possibly available. Who knows? Maybe.
Yeah, we'll see.
Running the shows from the shadows, producer Dammer, who just shadowed himself. That was wild. And then obviously being joined, Austin Rico joining us today. How are you, Austin?
I'm good. Excited to talk some Vandal football. It's been a minute.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously the news, Paul Petrino has been let go early of his contract as the Idaho Vandal head football coach. Brian Martson did a lot, if not most, if not all of the legwork for the story. So, Brian, I'm going to kind of concede the floor to you to kind of go over this as much as you want in the terms of breaking the story, and then we'll all kind of give our reactions and maybe a peek into the future.
Yeah, we'll just be quick, too. The interesting part of this is the story, not the fact that we were involved. But for us, hey, this was a big deal. Dallas was absolutely involved in helping break the story. Us two being involved is going to surprise none of our listeners. But also, just want to make it clear, part of why we were able to do this is because listeners support us and listeners trust us. That is absolutely how we got our foot in the door in the first place. Our sources remained anonymous because we had absolutely no choice. So they're going to continue to remain anonymous. And anytime they're referenced, the answer is not confirmed, not denied. Anonymous means anonymous. But I got to tell you, for the last few days, I've been married to my phone because all of this, like doing actual journalistic kind of stuff, which is not what we usually do here, is time sensitive. Absolutely a lot of late phone calls, some with Dallas, some with other journalists. Colton Clark did a ton of advising for us to help make sure we knew that we were doing this right. And we have complete confidence that we did this the right way. When we got confirmation we're ready to run, that day was stressful as hell, getting in contact with the athletic department. Also, we all hold full-time jobs, so this was just a ton of work. But I got to say, it was real exciting to be the people who broke the news. In my interactions online, both through Tubbs' account and my own account, ton of people were really supportive. A lot of people, particularly Big Sky Podcast Network and local journalists, told us, "Hey, great job. We're really, really happy for you guys." I'm happy that part's over, but I got to tell you, hey, for Tubbs, this was a big deal. So, for all the listeners who support us since day one, thank you. For all the people who trusted us, both as a show and as a source, thank you guys as well. We're going to keep doing things the right way. And I think that's about as much as talking about the story itself that we need to go in, Chris, because what's important is what actually happened.
Yeah, that was wild. For the insight for everybody, some of the people got to see me in Moscow. I was driving up for the Coug basketball game, Vandal game, and there's road slides on 55 or whatever. So I had to go through forest roads through the middle of nowhere. So when I was in the middle of nowhere, we had not ran the story. And then I got into cell service. My phone blew up. So that was a wild drive for me for sure. But yeah, like I said, Brian did a lot of legwork here, and congratulations.
I mean, Dallas did a ton of work too.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
It was like just the last thing, and we'll move on to the actual story. We'll quit filibustering Austin. So Austin, thanks for being here. So we can. Thanks for being here, Austin. So we can like lecture you on the thing that is probably like least interesting for you. We can do it anytime. But no, Dallas did a lot of legwork too. This was certainly not a one-person effort. My name was on the article because I did write it, but it was a team process. Me and Dallas being the big people who were directly involved. We're pretty proud of what we did. We know we did things the right way, and that's how we got the scoop. That's how we got the story.
All right. So let's move on to it. I believe producer Dammer sent me an awesome order here. Yep, there we go. But yeah, we will do a little bit of a audible, I think, on it because I think Boatman's right here. A lot of stuff has come out about, Coach Petrino wins his last game, but like Rico, I know a lot of the people that probably were the most upset about this are current and former players and the athletic staff. Having you on, obviously we always have Boatman, but you can kind of give an insight that most of our listeners aren't former players, so they don't have the insight that like a you or a Boatman would have. So kind of what would you like to let the listeners know about, Coach Petrino?
I think he gets a bad rap. I know we all see the animated side of him, especially on the sidelines. And that's a big turnoff for a lot of people. Can't fault people for that. You're not going to change people's opinions. But inside those walls, like inside the Kibby Dome, man, that guy just wanted to win. And I put out a tweet. I don't know, maybe some people saw it regarding, just be thankful. You can be happy he's gone, but there's no need to sit there and dance on the man's, grave here at Idaho. Like, what good does it do? You get all these different talking heads, and I see all the different things that people post, and there's so much that's just not true that you just can't understand from outside the Kibby Dome. And yeah, you can say you go in to watch the game, but as far as that team goes, that guy wanted what's best for the team, and man, did he want to win. Maybe didn't get as many wins as we all would have liked. We did get that bowl win, which was huge, but shoot, I had to go back and check because Idaho has not been a dominant football program the last 20 years. Sadly, we all want it to be, and this is how low the marker is. I went and looked how many 4-win seasons we've had since 2000. 4 of them were before Petrino. Petrino was responsible for 3. So to sit there and say, oh, we didn't get this, there just hasn't been a ton there. Like, it's a tough spot to really come in. We're on the Palouse. We got WSU right next door. And then you throw everything else out there. He stayed with us throughout the drop. When his brother Bobby was hired on at Louisville, could have went and been an offensive coordinator there, been compensated nicely, gone. And obviously they had success there. They had Lamar, all these guys. But man, he literally came and told us, like, I'm not going anywhere. I want to win here. We're going to get it done here. And sure enough, we did. Did we sustain that after the bowl game? Sadly not. Did we drop down? Yeah, stuck with us then. But ultimately, that's just the big thing is we can rattle off all these different things, that you want to say against Coach P, and I will sit there and go back and forth with you guys all day long with it. But ultimately, man, I know a lot of those guys in the locker room are so grateful for him, for the opportunity to play for him, all the effort he put in. Because, shoot, this guy is literally in the building 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. It's ridiculous. And yeah, I'll go ahead and stop. I'll let you guys go ahead, and I'll chime in where needed.
Okay, sounds good. Brian, I think we're going to roll with you next. What are kind of your, looking back on it all, reactions to the Petrino news?
It's going to be so hard to not talk for like an hour, so I won't. But, Austin's right. Petrino has a reputation. We absolutely were told he has a reputation for being a guy who, football is what he cares about. That's kind of the lens through what he did the entire time at U of I. Honestly, it didn't matter what topic people talked to us about. They said, look, football is just football and family. You want to know Paul? Nobody cares about football, family, probably family first, then football second. And other than that, nothing really matters to the guy. I think one of the things that is tough about going over Paul is Paul became representative to a lot of fans of Idaho not being able to turn around, some of which is not 100% Paul's fault. Some of it absolutely is. But between the 2 years with Mason, between the contract that Idaho couldn't do anything about, I think that became part of what animated a lot of online frustration you'll see towards Paul. And of course, people online are less nice than they are in person anyway, so that's kind of a given. But I mean, I know I appreciate the years he put in. We'll talk, adjudicate the record, all that stuff. But if you're a head coach at the college level, you are putting a ton of time in. Your family has to be okay with some instability that a lot of people in their typical jobs don't have to deal with. So before we get to any sort of critiques, I will say, look, he put in a lot of work for the university. I wish it worked better. There'll be things we talk about later in the show for sure that might be more critique. But as far as the time he put in, the effort, no one ever doubted Paul as a guy who was absolutely all in trying. People doubted that he was too stubborn at times, and I'll say that, no question. But I appreciate the work the dude put in. That's I guess what I'll close it out there. Everyone knows he worked hard. Everyone knows he cared about the university. Rico's right. He easily could have had a transition point when we did the drop down. He believed in himself. He believed in the university. For that, he deserves to be commended.
Yeah, and I'll take it next here, and I think this is going to be kind of an echo chamber. Like, one, I think Terry said in her press conference about the new coach, like, there's no doubt anybody worked hard. There's no, the way we broke the story put him in a difficult spot because he had to coach, for a couple of days there, knowing that everybody knew he was basically a lame duck coach at that point. Fennessy did not have to deal with that until the day of, and you looked, and Paul Petrino was able to rise above that, get a team ready for a game, and win the ICCU Battle of the Domes to close out his season, 100th game in charge of a team, and pick up another win. So, like, it goes to show that, like, he's very much outside distractions, never something that got in the way. He put in more work than, for instance, when Akey was let go, that was one of the complaints with Akey, was that he just wasn't working hard anymore. So Paul never quit working hard. I think you see it by the outpouring of a lot of the former players who really don't have a benefit of, having to say nice things to him. They don't go in the locker room any day. And you can see the outpouring of former players like Rico. Saw Lloyd Hightower post some stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of former dudes. Obviously, Coffee was posting like that still come out and will go to bat for Paul Petrino. Because despite like what Rico said, you see him on the sideline, you see how animated he gets. A lot of people don't think he's as much of a player's coach as he is. The players that are in his locker room love him. So I think you got to take that. And then kind of what I think it was Lloyd and also Austin said it on here. Like, my point of view is I'm really excited about the future of Idaho football. I think we're in a really fun opportunity that hopefully we don't get put in too much more frequently unless it's based on success, where we're having to go through a coaching search. So I'm looking forward to that. And as somebody who looks forward to that, like, all I'll say to the people online that are just like acting like Paul kicked their dog or something and it's personal with him, it's a bad look on the university when we're trying to hire the next guy and, the old guy is going out for not a scandal, not something, players love him and people are beating him down. So I'll just say, like, we're becoming in an increasingly digital world, and that is something that next coaches are going to be able to see. And if you want us to be in the best place possible to hire a guy coming in here, I'm not saying they're going to be turned off by it, but like, just be aware that we're currently a free agent. And we don't want to appear to be like the Cleveland Browns or the Jacksonville Jaguars. We want to come off as a strong, organization that has organizational support and does have expectations. But I just be aware of that. That's something that a new coach is going to be looking at. So I'm very much adamant against dancing on the grave. I think it is a bad look for us, but I get that people are excited. And I don't think excitement has to turn into spitefulness. Boat.
Yeah, it's been a weird, interesting last week. Obviously, I've heard a lot of the stuff that Brian and Dallas have been coming up with in terms of news the last week before it all broke, and I knew it was going to happen when it happened, which is really unfortunate. I actually really tried to get these guys to hold off at least until the team meeting after practice Thursday, because that's when I had a feeling he was probably going to tell the guys in person. Obviously, would love to come out Saturday. That was the original plan, is news was going to happen Saturday, but it kind of became more apparent that it was going to get out regardless. So that was a pretty tough day on Thursday. It's kind of surreal sitting there. But, yeah, he's gone. It's weird. No one has coached more games for the University of Idaho in its entire history than Paul Petrino. One of 3 coaches to win a bowl game for us. I'll kind of get into it later, I guess, after we have some more time, but I don't know when he would have, people were calling for him to be fired years ago. I just don't know when that would have happened. And I'll kind of break down why, I guess, later. Cause it's, institutional things matter. Buyouts matter. When's the right time? COVID happened. It was a weird time, right? Like there was a bunch of always something that just kind of kept something kind of going on and on. The stability was fantastic. We never had guys get in trouble. Like our biggest thing, right? Like our biggest thing of guys getting in trouble in Idaho was guys would maybe go steal some food from Winco, right? Like I think that maybe
like one
speaks
time.
more to. It happened a few
years.
times, but I think that happened. I think that maybe speaks more to the volume of NCAA payments and what guys were getting at Idaho versus the structures of NCAA, right? Like that was the worst thing ever happened. Like guys weren't beating up pizza delivery guys like 8 miles away, right? Like guys weren't getting in all out fist fights at frat parties with people like 8 miles away. Like we had a good culture. I mean, I know Rico was there all his first 4 years. Rico saw the changeover from when he showed up. By the time Austin left December of 2016, it was like night and day. Like I even saw 14 to 16, like 14 to 15 was a massive change. Like a lot of guys left the program. We were short a day of practice in 2014 because of the APR of guys leaving because they were not great guys on the team in 2012, 2013 when we showed up. That all changed. Chris, I think you've mentioned like all the guys in the NFL that have played
more
under
than any other coach.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. Like got a lot of guys who become really good dudes, and I know like Rico and I are part of a couple different chats with all former players, and like I don't think we're more thankful than to just like have met each other and been a part of the same team. And Petrino was because of that. He put me on scholarship. Like that's life-changing stuff. Spent 2.5 years on scholarship because of him. So yeah, it's weird. And obviously like my love for Idaho has been before Paul Petrino and will stay after Paul Petrino because it hits a little different for me than a lot of guys who play for the University of Idaho. So yeah, I've seen a lot happen with this program before I was a player, and now it's on to the next. Fortunately, it didn't work out. I think we all wish it would have worked out because that means we were winning games, right? Like he wanted to win. He was a great guy. I think more former players would say good things about him than would say bad. So I think if that tells you anything from inside, tells you what kind of person he was.
Dallas, producer Hammer, wrap kind of up your initial reactions, kind of the whole thing.
I mean, while I am grateful for what Paul did when he took over from Akey, I mean the program was in a pretty tough spot there, and I wouldn't even say that all of it was on Akey. The transition from the WAC falling apart to independent to Sunbelt, and then obviously Paul stepped in as that was starting to happen. That's going to be tough for any coach, and that brings back to the point of we've heard people saying Paul should have been fired years ago, and like both said, there's institutional things that are happening. The drop down to the FCS is going to buy any coach extra years because you're going through unprecedented things that nobody's ever gone through. So I think that's all very important to keep in context. But at the end of the day, it was 9 years, 34 and 66. Like it's not a great look. You have to go back to the 50s before obviously the Tom Cable, and everything after Tom Cable has just been sadness for Idaho. But from the 60s through the 90s, Petrino would have had the worst coaching record of any of those guys. And so that's I think the context we have to remember is, yes, Idaho is a really, really tough job right now. It's hard to get people to come to Moscow, Idaho to come play football. Obviously it's in a dome, which is great, but Moscow's a little town in the Pacific Northwest. It's hard to recruit there. It's hard to it's hard to win. It's not a destination job. If the successor to Paul Petrino is named and he ends up winning 10 games once or twice, that guy's gone. Like he's not going to be a career job here. Like, and that's something we have to, I think, kind of understand it as Idaho fans, but it just feels like time. I covered this team when Akey was winding down his tenure as a student journalist. Then I moved on to TV in Spokane, covered the end of his tenure, the first 3 years of Petrino's, and then kind of retired and stepped away. But I have heard for a long time a lot of things behind the scenes from different players that weren't thrilled, and different parents that weren't thrilled. And so I do think there's a middle ground of, obviously Rico and Boatman had great things to say. I have plenty of parents and kids that have transferred out, and kids that are still on the team that aren't happy about it, and think that they deserved better. And there's such a weird way, because there's no way to ever get a 100% read on it. Like, none of us have a relationship with him to the point that we're going to his house every Thanksgiving and know the ins and outs of how everything went. Like, Boatman and Rico obviously know more than us, because you guys played for him, but we get different messages from different people. It's such a weird situation where, like Chris was saying, he's not being terminated for awful things dealing in the program. It's not like this is some disastrous breakup. It's just, it was time. Didn't win enough games. And I think that is the ultimate thing to remember here is, some people had great experiences. Some people had terrible experiences. It's all just kind of there. And at the end of the day, it's just, he didn't win enough games. That's it.
And also, hey, real quick, Austin's going to go next. He has the timeline. So, Austin, feel free to go long, because you've been sitting for a while, man.
No, I don't need to go long by any means. I just, you guys have kind of brought it all up. I don't necessarily disagree with the firing. I mean, we've talked about it. You mentioned it. You got to win. That's bottom line. You had 9 years. I think we mentioned longest tenured coach, correct?
Yep.
That being said, you got to win games. And I have no issues with that. And I think Petrino would even say to be like, okay, we didn't get as many wins as, I would have liked. It's understandable. My issue is all the shots at his character. Was he the perfect coach? No, heck no. Who is? I mean, you find me one coach where he has 100% player approval going, that guy's awesome. Somebody's not going to play. Somebody's not going to like how they run it. And he's very animated. You guys have probably seen scrimmages. You guys have obviously seen the games that I'd mentioned. It's not going to fit every single player. Of course, you're going to have players transfer. I always hear the one with Jake Luton transferring out. Oh, well, we could have had him. We had Matt. Matt was better for the system as far as he was just a very cerebral player. Jake saw the writing on the wall, and he went the JUCO route. He went to Oregon State. It's paid off dividends for him. Great decision, but I don't think anything changes. I mean, he came in and played with us. Maybe it wasn't right system-wise. Like, that's just – you can't do anything about that.
And he came and watched a game. So, obviously, it's not a, resentment towards the university or Paul. Luton came to a game this fall.
It's a tough spot. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to play. Shoot, if we're being completely honest, if I wasn't playing, I probably would have looked to transfer because, as you mentioned, it gets cold. Man, we work out as hard as anybody else in the country. And then you mentioned those practices. It's tough. You talk to anybody who's working right now, they're going to tell you work is a breeze after dealing with practices. And that's part of Coach Petrino's plan. Again, if somebody, rips into me, so be it. I'll kind of live with it. And more often than not, I'm going to try and, go back and forth with them. And typically I'd use that through my play. Whenever Petrino was on me, play shot through the roof because no, I don't want you coming at me again. Like, I'm going to get the job done. But not everybody responds that way. So, just from the coaching standpoint, we got to get wins. But when you deal with the different players, yeah, people are going to be hurt. It totally depends on the person. Some people can take an ass chewing is basically the best way to describe it. Thankfully, I wasn't on the end of too many because I got the job done. But believe me, Coach P and I had some, back and forth where we're animated. And it depends on the type of person you are. Some people, they get yelled at, they're going to kind of, hole up, they don't want to be around it. And then you look at a lot of people that had success, they'll dish it right back at him. So yeah, it's just tough. It's tough. And that's my big thing is, if you're happy that he's gone, I have no issue with that. I wish the best for the next coach, but seeing all this negative stuff towards him, what kind of coach wants to come into a fan base with no attendance and a bunch of people that are just going to sit there and every little thing, oh, this guy is, I'm not going to say a bunch of words because I don't care for it, but it's just, what kind of message does that send to the, hopefully the successor who's going to take over and, lead us to those 10 wins, get us into the FCS playoffs since we dropped down. That's got to be the goal right now. We've got to get there. We have the facilities. We need somebody that's going to get the recruiting done and send us to that next level.
Yep.
I guess real quick, Chris, before Rico has to go here. Yeah, I mean, like he took a job not too many people really wanted this job, right? Like he took this job in 2013 when we were an independent team. We knew we were going to Sun Belt, but like we had no home. There was bad internal things with regards to players' grades, APR. Like I think you could say that internally, like he left this job better than he found it. And also
we would have killed for 4 win seasons.
And also stability wise, right? Like stability wise of we know where our conference is at. We know where our future lies. You know, it's not like what's going to happen. Like he left this place better, I think, than he found it. We do have talent there. We do have people there to win some games. I think we've seen it. We've seen that we could have won some games, more games this year or last year. And we referenced the 66 lot 34 and 66. If you take out those first 2 years, which I know you can't do that, but like no one expected us to do anything those first 2 years. He's 32 and 45 in 7 years, which like still below 500, but definitely better than what anyone else has done at Idaho since Chris Tormey. So I mean that it's I think we're in a good spot to move on to what's next. I thank him for everything he's done, but yeah, I think we're in a good spot compared to when he found it.
Brian,
I got a follow-up question.
I was gonna say, do you guys have any?
I got a follow-up question for Rico before he jumps off, and it's because like everyone here involved in the story, and Austin's involved in the story because he played for Paul. I was involved in the story in the sense that we were involved in breaking it. We of course had nothing to do with the actual decision making, but like I said earlier, my experience of this online, there were of course some jackasses, no question. Overwhelmingly, the tone of responses to me was positive to us, but also positive to the university saying, hey, go get yourself a coach. There were jokes, of course, but as far as like mean stuff or like over the top stuff, I know I saw some. I actually didn't see a ton of it directed at Tubbs or directed at me personally that was in that tone. Was your experience different, Austin, or is it more like I don't know which is correct. Is that your experience, or did you experience that? No, there were some really touchy ones that just were not okay, and that's what you're responding to, but it's not necessarily volume.
Yeah, I mean, it's more so just dealing with Petrino. As far as the school, I don't think everybody wants to see the school succeed that's going to be commenting on it. It's been the outroar towards Coach Petrino. Oh, this guy was an a-hole. All this nepotism, all these sexual assault cases. I will go through each one of those things back and forth with you. I mean, because those are the big ones. I remember, Boat remembers it vividly. We had the reporter claiming that Petrino was going to come and fight him. I was out of practice because naturally we don't have a ton of time on the field during practice, so I'd stay late and kick. Petrino got animated, but there was never a period where, blows were going to be exchanged. Really what happened was the director of player ops was like, no, let's go inside. Because basically Petrino was just going to give him a piece of his mind, which given the line of questioning wasn't out of tone, but
not surprising from knowing Paul either.
No. And because he's kind of taking shots at his player. Basically the whole question is, why can't Matt complete a deep ball right now? He's like, what are you talking about? So he's going back, giving his mind. Basically, director of player ops is like, let's just go inside. Like, this guy clearly doesn't get it. And because he put his hand on him and said, let's go inside, he used that, construed it, as writers are known to do, as, he had to be restrained. He was going to come, he was going to come and hit me, all this stuff. And I'm just sitting there laughing that this is, the way the story got spun. That's just one.
You and I were both like 20 feet away. I remember that.
We
were both right there.
I remember reading it, and we were just like, "This is such a joke." Like that's when we lost kind of respect. And it's great to he's with the Seahawks now. He's doing a great job covering them. Happy to see it. But the way that story was turned was, it was really unfortunate because again, Coach P has this rap of being very animated and aggressive, all this stuff on the sideline, and it's like, yeah, he does that with his players. Like there's never any physical stuff like that. Like to sit there and say, it might have come to blows. It's just such a joke.
He's not Jimmy Lake.
No, I'm aware of a writer. Austin, I'm aware of a writer who covered Idaho around that time who had similar response of like it was intense, but what it became described as like the physicality part was let's just call it generous.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember Theo was
he's
the
as
right. I
likely
remember
to
that.
throw
He came out
hands
and
as
said
I
that.
probably was that day then. Sorry, Bo.
No, I was saying I remember that, Brian. I remember Theo Lawson was the Tribune writer at the time, and he came out and said that I never felt like I was going to get physical. But like what Jimmy Lake was just getting criticized for, right? What he did in public, and people were saying he didn't even touch the guy. He barely even touched the guy, right? Like that was people are going back and forth. I never once saw Paul come close to doing that to a player in private, in practice, anywhere in 9 years, right? Like some people are saying Jimmy Lake barely touched him.
In the Kibbie Dome in 2016 against you guys, his very first game, marched out to midfield and grabbed a player by the face mask to chew him out. Like in the middle of a game. Like we're talking about like it's football, and like I'm not saying that's okay or not okay. I'm just saying like, you know, it all depends on circumstance and you know whoever's telling the story. But yeah, like a lot worse has been done, and obviously some coaches have probably done nothing even close to it. But I definitely think it got shrewd.
To close the book on that part too, I think it's fair to say, in terms of like intelligently handling a situation, Paul probably could have done it better for himself because of what ended up happening, of course, overall. But people on the outside do need to know football and look, basketball coaches, a lot of sports coaches, their interactions in the moment, especially in games, it's different. Things are time sensitive, intensity, or what looks like, you know, what we call hard coaching. Stuff that in an office would probably not be okay. It's fine. And actually a lot of players need that. And behavior like that, you know, that fits under the okay definition of hard coaching. People need to relax about seeing some of that in public. I know a lot of it is more likely to happen in the locker room, but you know, Austin, you've probably experienced hard coaching. You don't feel like you are worse off for it. People just need to understand competitive athletics is executed differently than an office job or most other jobs. And the disciplinary responses, the supervisory responses are different as well.
Yeah. Cool. Any other closing takes, Rico? And then we'll kind of move on to, I guess, new coaches and then wrap it all up. But
I mean, not a ton. I mean, I think I touched up on most of the stuff that I wanted to. I'm sure you guys will cover some more as far as Petrino goes. But I mean, that's the big one. If anybody really wants to go out there and, you know, slander his character or whatever, feel free to, you know, message me about it. I got a first take at it. But I don't want to see. I just don't want to see the guy's name slandered like that. That's just the toughest part. But as far as I mean, I hope that we can get it turned around. As an Idaho alum, as an Idaho fan, I just want to see the Kibbie Dome packed. I mean, we only had a couple of games like that during the 2016 season when we were 9-4. I want to see people in there. That makes a big difference towards winning too. But man, there's nothing like that dome when it is packed because everything just stays trapped in there.
Yeah, it's loud.
I just hope that we can get people in seats, showing up to the games, showing support. Hopefully, you know, supporting the new regime here, and then, man, it's going to be up to the players and the coaches to start putting some wins on the field again because it's been a rough couple of years. I think we'd all attest. But yeah, I want to see it righted. And I wish Coach P the best. I know he was great for me, great for Bo, great for a lot of guys. And yeah, I just you know, just be thankful. Whether you're happy he's gone or not, just say thanks. It was great that, you know, he came in, gave 9 years on the Palouse of all places. But yeah, that's all I got. Appreciate you guys letting me on today.
Yep. Rico, thank you for joining us. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. And like you said, you got questions, reach out. Cool. So my kind of takeaway. Yeah, thanks, Austin.
See you guys.
Thanks, Rico.
So my kind of takeaway on all this is like, I mean, my last little bit to take away is I think it's important, once again, to shift this kind of towards the future. And I think Terry Golick has received a lot of like negative criticism in the fact that like she didn't fire Paul, but one, like earlier, obviously it's done now. But one, she inherited that contract. That is not her signing. And the money had to be raised for it to be a thing. So I know a lot of people like, oh, they should have fired him sooner. They should have fired him years ago. It's like, well, at the end of the day, maybe it was this losing recently. I mean, obviously Brian probably knows more because he did some of the legwork on this. So feel free to touch on it after. But like the money was never there to buy him out of this contract, which she inherited. It is done now. So I think we need to give that a little bit of credit where it's due. Now, my biggest critique of the whole situation is I would love to know when they knew they were not going to retain him. I doubt it was the loss to Montana State, but if it was, then fine. If it was earlier, I would have preferred we make this move like an Ed Ogeron situation, make it earlier, let him coach out the season. Because Boat and I have talked a lot about this offline. I don't think the college football world is up to date yet on how important early signing day is for recruiting, as it is basically the main recruiting day now.
Look at Texas Tech. That's a great example.
And this new coach now has less than a month to put together a recruiting class. If they were hired today, less than 1 month to get their first class together. It's not like the old days where it was February 5th and you had time when these things happened in December. We have weeks to put together a recruiting class, and that's where I would have preferred the move been made earlier. If the decision had been made earlier to move on from Paul, that would be my critique of the athletic department, but I don't have any insight if that's true. Maybe their decision was Montana State, or the money was raised after that game. So Brian, I guess any takes on what I said or anything you'd like to kind of add to
So I'm going to be brief about the fundraising part because it's actually a little bit convoluted to do in less than like 15 minutes, because the athletic department certainly didn't have this official, like, hey, go away, Paul Petrino fund. It has to be pretty clear but from the athletics department that they're ready to move on, and then have separate organizations at the same time. Because the donors, of course, like, let's pretend that, and again, all our sources are anonymous. I'm not saying this happened. This is hypothetical. If donors happened to just raise money on their own and give it, well, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that the university is ready to move on just because the money exists. It has to be honestly, essentially a united front of the university is ready to move on, and in one organizational way or the other, the message gets out to donors to raise money for it, which makes it a little bit complicated. But that's part of why it's difficult, in that the admin needs to be sure this is what they want to do before any of that goes out. Because, I mean, there's nothing that could tank a university's reputation with potential new hires better than to hear that, they're looking at raising money to fire a guy when they don't even know if they want to fire him. So that part is pretty tough to go over, other than to say, there clearly had to be an understanding at some level. I'm not commenting about when or where, because our sources are anonymous. That means anonymous. That's the fundraising part. The thing I want to bring up, I don't know anyone, or I know like two people maybe, who think this was the wrong move to get rid of Paul. The results absolutely speak for themselves. I mean, I did a lot of research, maybe a deep dive, you might say, on his actual record throughout this time. Paul has 5 total wins in his career against against teams from the same classification with a winning record. That means, FBS versus FBS or FCS versus FCS, 5 in 9 years. I don't know what could possibly be more damning than that. If you want to count Sac State in 2017, that number jumps up to 6, but Sac State is FCS and we're FBS. So that's, different classification. Big Sky record speaks for itself. 11-17 in 4 years, 2-13 on the road. Just not good enough. Just not close to good enough. And the other one, to me, reputationally, Idaho was taking a hit by having Paul. The longer Paul stayed on, the worse it was for the university's reputation. We were a joke amongst a lot of media figures, a lot of fan bases, because, like, hey, of course you have Paul. This is what you're going to get when they saw in the Big Sky. We have fan bases who don't even take us seriously yet as rivals, because what they feel is, hey, we'd love for Idaho to be good. It's more of like condescending pat on the back that they hope things turn around. That could change now. But I don't know anyone, Chris, maybe you guys do. I don't know anyone in the world who would possibly say it wasn't time to go. With the Mason 2 years that we talked about, with how the record went after the drop down, with the attendance just going to a crater, which is not all Paul, but not winning was a huge deal. We dropped down for attendance. This was unequivocally, to me, the right move. Had to happen. I'm excited for us to move on.
Head coaches are judged on wins and losses. And at the end of the day, I mean, Rico said it. I don't even think Paul would tell you that he won enough. I'm pretty sure Paul, like I said, I don't talk to Paul. I'm pretty sure he would even not find a way to justify him not being retained as coach. I think he understands at the end of the day, though he did have a tough ship through multiple changes or whatever, we have been in the Big Sky now for 4 years. It's the most stability we've had while he was a coach. We will have had 4, assuming Trey goes to the draft, 4 guys that were in the NFL on the team at the same time and couldn't eclipse 5 wins. At the end of the day, his job is 100% predicated on wins and losses, and he lost more than he won. Boatman?
Yeah, I kind of kind of prefaced it earlier when I was talking at first about kind of situations of, people going for, oh, Paul should have been fired a long time ago. Okay. I'm kind of going to break down why maybe he wasn't. So year 3, we went 4-8 with pretty close time to getting 6-6. Some people say that was a disappointing year. Actually, honestly, we did not deserve to go to a bowl game that year. Like we were not good enough yet. We were so short and injured. I think for those games versus Mexico State, we took like 4 linebackers to Las Cruces that night. People say that was a year we should have gone to a bowl game. Probably not. We just weren't there yet. 17, I would say, is probably the most disappointing year we've had, because we didn't lose a conference game by more than 6 points. We blew a massive lead to Western Michigan. Like we should have gone to a bowl game. We should have been playing Josh Allen and Wyoming the Potato Bowl. So you kind of think about, okay, people said when Paul should have been fired a long time ago. When? What was the opportunity to? You're not going to fire him after 17, okay? Because we had just a year off a bowl game. We were really close to going to winning more games. We were then dropping down. 18. You're not going to fire him after a first year of dropping down, because I was only 2 years removed from a bowl game, right? It's the whole like, when's a good time, especially if you have money to do it. We didn't really have money to do it. You're not going to fire him after 18. 19, we went 5-7, which is our best year yet in FCS. We actually probably should have gone 7-4. Should have beaten Wyoming. We should have beaten Northern Colorado. Maybe played Portland State better. That was close to being a playoff level team that we almost had somehow. Okay, so 19, maybe like you can start talking about it more seriously. Well, then what happened in 2020? COVID. I mean, we changed to a spring season. He wasn't getting fired after the spring. Coming into the fall, like that was not going to happen. So honestly, in my real opinion, like this is the first year you could actually probably let Paul go within reason of situations in terms of record and years played, and then also within reason of buyout. People are going to criticize, oh, well, Terry got left with a bad, like Chris said, Terry got left with a bad buyout by Spear. Okay, like that also is it's a double-edged sword, because at our level, you make sure you want to protect yourself. You have a great season. We saw success heading the right way. You thought like, okay, this is the guy. We got a good guy finally. You want to make sure you protect yourself financially so that if he does leave, we do get some good money out of it. And there was actually talks for him. I remember he was in the running for Western Kentucky, Nevada. Bobby offered him to be the OC at Louisville, right? This is all within like right around that bowl game time. So we upped his contract to make sure we protected our own self. It's a double-edged sword, because if you start failing, you owe him all out of money yourself. So you're pretty much betting saying, this is the guy we want and we need for a while. If it doesn't work out, we run into a situation like we are now, where it took a long time to get there. So that's kind of part 2 of this. Part 3, institutionally, we were a mess the better part of half a decade. I mean, probably say even a decade, honestly. People have a different opinion on Dr. Spear. AD for a very long time, through like 3 or 4 presidents. So by the time he left, he did wield a lot of power and influence in the athletic department that Terry doesn't have right now, because of just longevity. We went through a president situation where our former president didn't really care a whole lot for athletics, didn't really care a whole lot for our success. It wasn't part of his platform. It wasn't part of his, I care about this enough to really give a shit. If it happened, great. If it didn't, who cares? We went through a situation where the AD was let go. The president's contract was not renewed. We were finally, and then COVID happened, right? We were finally, and we had a massive institutional deficit. We were finally in a spot institutionally where we've had an awesome president for the last few years. We have our institutions thriving. We're on the path to becoming an R1, which is massive institutionally. We have an AD who's been around for a while. Like, this is the best the University of Idaho has been, guys, in a very long time, top to bottom. So no one was going to be able to fire Paul, because who was his boss? He had an interim, he had an AD who was on the ropes with his president, who was just trying to fight Spirit saying we're fighting each other constantly, guys. Like, it was bloody inside for a while between those two. So no one's really looking at Paul. We have an interim AD. He goes away. Terry comes along. No one's going to fire someone in their first year, especially at Idaho. We're not like Florida or USC, right, who fires a coach in a second. And then COVID happens. I know I keep saying COVID. Like, that is massive, because it changed our whole season. We started playing in the spring. So there was never really a good time to let Paul go within reason until this year. So that's why it finally happened. Like, I know it's a really long-winded thing. I know I've been talking for a minute. That's to kind of provide some insight on why it did happen finally and why it hasn't happened till now. People, I mean, I think that's the things. This should happen a long time ago. This should happen a long time ago. Please, within reason, tell me when it should have happened and who was giving the money to do so. And I will say, yes, you're right. But until then, like, no, it wasn't able to happen until now. This is the first time it did have to happen. Oh, Chris with the muted.
Oh, yeah.
Read my lips. Producer Dammer.
So I do want to point out the wins and losses is the ultimate thing. There are 28 wins against same level opponents. The combined record of those winning teams, 104 wins and 218 losses. So there's not a whole lot of quality wins to begin with. Obviously, Brian mentioned that there were only 5 teams that won more games than they lost. So I think that's important to keep in mind, that there were a lot of really bad teams that Paul beat up on. And that's, again, 104 wins to 218 losses is a pretty substantial amount of losses more. One thing that is something that I have been thinking about in the background here this whole time, Boatman, you mentioned Paul, you think Paul left this program in a better place than he found it. And while I would agree with that, I do think there's things to discuss about that. Obviously, the academic issues that happened at the end of Akey's tenure are gone. I think we'd all argue there's much more talent that's going to be coming back in 2022 than there was in 2013. I feel like the actual football team itself is in a better state. And a lot of this is not necessarily on Paul, but losing matters. When Akey was fired, there were 2 games. There was the New Mexico State game at home. He was fired on the road against Louisiana Tech. And then the next game was San Jose State at home. The attendance for those 2 games, 14,700 and 14,400. So they turned over Rob Akey in the middle of a absolute terrible season, and people were still showing up. People were still filling the dome. We had a couple thousand in attendance for games this year. And that's the one thing that I question. Is this program truly in a better place than it was? You take out the things like FBS and FCS. Obviously, that's a slightly different argument to make.
Big one,
I guess
100% the argument.
I'll answer your question here in a second, Dallas. So continue on, then I'll kind of answer your question because I do have some thoughts on that.
Oh, the horse is back
and
out.
So that's sort of my question is, obviously, you said 2019, there's the argument. That's where I would have made the argument. I think 2 years of the dead horse, I think that killed a lot of the fan base. Obviously, losing has only made things worse. And it's tough to say it's the FBS or FCS because we don't know. If we were winning in the FCS, would people be showing up? I like to think yes. I think others would argue no. It's so tough to get a full grasp of where.
But like you said, even when we were losing in the FBS, we drew. Because San Jose State objectively is a better team to watch, no matter how piss poor they were that year, than Southern Utah. And we've seen it. It's just, I mean, that's you hear it from people all the time that they just won't go to watch us play Northern Arizona. Like, it's just a problem that, yeah, Paul is part of it, because especially when you're losing, they're definitely not coming out. But 100%, I'm not gonna lie, I did not go to a lot of the last games because I did not, and I objectively like the FCS and the Big Sky. I do not care about those opponents, and I'm saying that as somebody who semi covers the team and is a fan of this division of level of football. But if you're trying to convince me to drive 5.5 hours to watch Southern Utah, we could even sell out against Montana, and that should be a game whether we're losing or winning, it sells out. Because whether we were winning or losing, and that was Boise State, that place was sold out. So I get that there's definitely your 100% perspective too of there's that mix of obviously some of it is losing versus winning, but I think the FCS thing is going to be a hard thing for this entire program, but that's nobody's fault but frickin' Stabens.
Right. So I guess real quick. I mean, so yeah, it does play a part. I said, left a team better internally. I'm talking about APR, better talent. We don't have a bunch of knuckleheads on the team who are always getting in trouble, right? That's what I'm saying. He left the program better internally. Stuff you don't see every day that we do see, right? The FBS, FCS does play a part of it, right? Winning cures a lot of things. But also, Dallas, I think I actually think it's a nationwide problem. Attendance is down everywhere, no matter how good you are. That's just the age we live in now. Like, when we were playing those games for San Jose State, you couldn't go onto your ESPN app, watch the game from your phone. Like, that didn't exist. Now you can. So I mean, we're seeing everywhere here at West Virginia, right? Like, this is a place that naturally, has always had a lot of attendance. The whole state loves this place. But we're playing Texas. We're struggling to pass 45,000 fans in a 60,000 seat stadium. Sure, we're not winning, but like, is winning as much as we can. But because people can sit on their home, on their couch, and watch ESPN2. Boise State's attendance has decreased. Think about, like, that's we measure that against a lot of things. Boise State's expanded their stadium. They've been winning for a long time. This is their worst year in a long time, and they're going to still win like 8 games, right? Yeah. But
Montana
even when
State
they
is bragging about being the first season they've sold out every game.
Even when they're winning 10, even when Boise was winning 10 games a year, right, constantly, they can't sell out all their games. That's just because now I think that has to play more part of it is it's the age we live in now. There's more content out there than everywhere. There's more things to occupy your time. Winning sure does help, right? Like, winning sure does bring a lot of things. I think has to play into A, we haven't been winning, right? So you contribute that to coaching. B, the FBS, FCS, and then C, just the natural progression of fan attendance, which just has been going down every sport, everywhere, even pro level. So I think that's maybe like answer part of your question in a really tiered way. But yeah, it does play a part to it. That's for sure.
Let me say Dallas's point in a different way. Because I agree with you unequivocally, Alex. I always say that because you two are right next to each other on the screen. But unequivocally, better talent. Unequivocally, Paul gave us stability. Now, the stability was being bad, but not preposterously bad. The stability was having talent, but always underachieving. What I think Dallas means a different way is the university, when we dropped down, part of the gamble was that Paul was the right guy, and that was a gamble we absolutely lost. For that, at the FCS level, he clearly was not good enough. Look at any Big Sky hires recently. Troy Taylor is having his second consecutive Big Sky championship, first outright. Sac State won 0 games the year before he was there. Every single recent Big Sky coach who's been hired, minus Ed McCaffrey and Bo Baldwin, but they're also in year 1. Well, year 1.5 for Baldwin. Most FCS coaches who've been hired who have success in the Big Sky, it doesn't take forever. It happens very close to within 1 year. You start to see a meaningful turnaround. Paul never did that in the Big Sky. In fact, it's the opposite, which is a point. I just have to talk about this. I've talked about it in private forever. My takeaway is going to be 2016 is a dividing line to understanding how a lot of fans understand Paul. 2016 was unequivocally a good season for Idaho. That win against Colorado State was a good win for our program. A lot of people thought that was a launching point to potential upward trajectory, or at least a trajectory of better stability at around or just above 500. My takeaway, and this is talking about the coaches only, not about the players, who I know 2016 is a big deal about how well they came together, and student leadership was a huge deal for that team. 2016 was buttressed off the weakest schedule we could possibly imagine. Idaho did not have a single regular season win against a team over 500, and we had 4 regular season wins against bad teams by 1 score. A bad Montana State team we beat 20-17. A bad UNLV team we beat 33-30. A bad Louisiana Monroe team we beat 34-31. A South Alabama team that had an okay looking record, but they also had 2 FCS wins to buttress that, we beat 38-31. If I read you any of those schedules in the Big Sky, like Sac State this year, guys, and said, hey, we gave someone a really easy schedule, but then next year it's much more difficult, you should expect regression. That's absolutely what we got, which is why, to me, I was ready to move on from Paul much earlier than a lot of people, because I just didn't think anything was built that we should understand sustained. It was better, but 2016 doesn't have a schedule that easy. We certainly don't finish with 9 wins in my mind, based off how we did against any team above 500 that year. And I mean, the closing point, Colorado State was Paul's first ever win against a team over 500. That took the last game of his 4th season. We certainly didn't change course after that of the type of teams we beat.
I will say, we always had a really big propensity to play every team close. We played down to levels of competition constantly, right? Like even if we were better than teams, we we could never blow anyone out. Like New Mexico State game there in 2016, like that's like one of the only times like I can recall that we ever did. We won a lot of close games this year. 2017, we just lost those close games. Like I still think we were a really good team in 2017. Like we just couldn't figure out how to win those close games. I think maybe because we were lacking a little bit of like people like 20 were maybe like and so influential in this team and like propelling this team to win games in 2016 that we just missed in 2017.
And Matt went down.
Yeah, I mean, if Matt doesn't get hurt versus Troy, I think we beat Troy, and I think even if we don't beat Troy, we win our last 3 games, and we go to a bowl game, right?
Yeah.
But I know everyone
can
kind of
got to recruit a backup,
right? And I think that's where I think a lot of people got lost with Paul. Was what happened after that year, and it lost a lot of people, inside sometimes too. Like,
well,
I think that those last 3 games going into 2018. It was a tough time. Like that was tough. Like that was a really tough time. Like it hurt because in 2017 we knew we were good still. Like we knew we were still good enough to go to a bowl game that year. We just couldn't get it done. And I just think I've talked about it a lot. Like 2018, we just not a lot of guys wanted to play. We weren't prepared well enough for the level of change of like how play was different, right? Like Sunbelt play to Big Sky play is so vastly different. And Paul's style of coaching fit the Sunbelt pretty well, relatively, like how, what we were familiar with. And we just weren't ready to go for 2018 whatsoever. Like, maybe even recruit wise, just level, like our seniors, I think we were just like, felt we got kicked in the teeth because it was like, what are we doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like I've said this before, like, it's like, what are we doing? Like we just went to a bowl game 2 years ago. We still have a lot of guys in this team. Like we went to a bowl game 2 years ago, won it. The year before, we still felt like we were good enough to go to a bowl game and win it. And we were really close. We were a Matt injury away from doing so pretty much. And now we're playing, on the road and in Davis, California, or playing on the road in Pocatello, right? It felt weird. And not to like crap on Big Sky, make an excuse. I'm just saying that was the mood of the team. It was not a good time. Like some of us joke still like 20, we're Sunbelt players. Even though like I played my last in Big Sky, it's like Sunbelt's our conference. Like that was our league. We love the Sunbelt. Like that's who we still identify with. And so it's like it was a really weird time. I don't want to make an excuse, but yeah, I mean, it was so weird. But we could have been better at that, and we weren't. And like we talked about, results-based business. He's done. He's moved on, and I think so on to the next one. Which
we're at basically the hour mark. Brian, Dallas. I know I don't have any more kind of closing points, but if you guys have any, you want to get them out, and then whoever is able or wants to stay, I would love to start talking about the next coach. Because nothing gets me more giddy than a schoolgirl than coaching searches.
Chris,
and conference realignment.
I'm going through 2 coaching searches right now. Actually, 3. I'm going through 3 coaching searches. 3.
Is Jeff Choate in all of them?
You're a lucky man.
Well, I don't know how Jeff Choate can coach soccer, but
Ted Lasso can do it.
Remember like 2 weeks ago where you're like, oh no, he's definitely staying in. And we're like, there's no way you think 1 win over Tottenham justifies this guy staying.
By the way, dude, I apologize. I yanked it away from Dallas. Dallas, you did sit on the shelf for a lot of the Paul talk, and you are one of the people like me who this was learning Paul was gone. That was a good day for you. Any closing points you have?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that the point has been made that there are plenty of players that really appreciated Paul and the way he coached them. Like Rico was saying, Paul was a hard ass. Good to get an ass chewing out of him. And it would work for some guys. I don't think it works for others. I think to me, that is the ultimate failing of a coach. If you cannot figure out how to connect to as many players as you can, that I think is a problem. And the amount of people that have reached out to us about how excited they are that he's gone, both just fans and then also the former players that we've spoken with, current players and their families that have spoken to us. I feel like there is a middle ground here of some guys really appreciated Paul, other guys hated him, and I don't think that either opinion invalidates the other. I just think it's something we have to acknowledge of, look, At the end of the day, it was the results. Some people loved him, some people hated him. At the end of the day, it's time to move on. It's time to start a new era and hopefully get back to winning some goddamn football games.
I mean, it's fair to say, like Dallas, and I'm fine, close the book on this. Paul was certainly not a close to universally beloved coach by the fan base. Of course, players are different. They have a different relationship, of course. But we haven't had this outpouring of people who are devastated Paul's gone. It's overwhelmingly people happy for us and happy for the university to change over because they knew he's look, the jury's in. How many we just got to correct the record. Rico said 4 winning seasons. That's close. With the conclusion of this season, it's four seasons with 4 wins. The jury's in. If you're willing to throw away the first 2 years, which I am, look at the rest. It's 4 wins with a blip of the bull season, but that's it. And the spring season equates to essentially a 4-win season as well. That's who he is. That's the thing he could build the Big Sky. It's just not good enough.
And to be
fair,
average,
below
when I
average,
was going to school,
average.
I would have killed to win 4 games because we constantly won 1 game. So, like, I do think it's kind of the benefit of, thank God, he at least got us to win more than 1 game every year. But 100% winning 4, when you start tasting it, starts to become pretty wearisome, as 1 does too. So that's where I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to just wait for the New Mexico State or Utah State game every year this is our one shot to get a win. But then, he gave me a taste of 4 wins. Then he gave me a taste of 9. I'm sorry. When you gave me a taste of 9 and then gave me 4 wins every year, I really wanted you to get me back to that 9 and not keep me at 4. So like we talked about earlier, being in a better spot, whatever, like, hell yeah, I'm glad we're not just winning 1 game, but let's find the coach that's going to take us from 4 back to 9 and 10.
Yeah. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, right? He's the best coach we've had percentage-wise since Chris Tormey. Like everyone else is, which isn't saying a whole lot.
It's not saying anything. It's bad.
But this millennium, it's been the best results we've had, unfortunately. But I think with our expectation of dropping down and moving on, our expectations changed from, hey, we like FBS, we would kill for, to be stable 4 wins with an occasional 6 or 7 win season, right? Now the expectation is, hey, we need to go above 500 every year. Like the expectation has moved up from here to here. We need to be pushing the playoffs every year. That's our expectation now. We gave 4 years of that at FCS. We haven't come close to that yet. I guess 2019 is the closest we got to that, hitting those marks, and it still didn't happen. We still fell short. So, it's on to the next. Idaho football has existed for well over 100 years. It's going to exist for a longer time. This was one chapter of it, and now, like we said, it's coaching search time, guys. This is an interesting job that is open. A very interesting job that is open,
and that's what I know. I just want to hit on this point because nothing makes me want to go full Paul Petrino on Mike Sean Dugar. Like these people that say that we can't afford, or why would they take this? Why would you come to Idaho? At the FCS level, this is a top 10 job. The facilities are there. The history is there. You're in a top 3 conference at the FCS level. You do have games where if you start winning, you should expect sellouts. Montana, Eastern, Montana State, even Weber currently. Yeah, we're 12,000.
Close. 12,000.
You have the ability to turn this into obviously we're not going to become North Dakota State overnight, but
I'd kill to be Northern Iowa.
Yeah, Northern Iowa. Why can't we be Sac State? Why can't if Sac State, a commuter school, can do this, we can get the right guy in, and maybe within a year. I'm a big believer, and I think you see it with just about every coach. That 3rd year is really, I feel like, the year you're going to see what that coach is about, which I guess is exactly what happened with Paul. We won 4 games, and that was exactly what Paul was about. Because that's where you start to get your guys in, and you can't just sneak up on people anymore. And you've usually played your entire conference.
I'd kill to be Northern Iowa.
So I expect to be and just structurally not allowed in this playoffs. That is hilarious.
For our listeners, we are talking about you and I making the playoffs virtually every single year.
Hey, they are technically that. They are technically Big Sky. They are technically Big Sky champions.
Oh God!
No, but okay. Not meaning to interrupt Chris, guys. It's a running joke amongst Big Sky Podcast Network and some Big Sky media figures that Northern Iowa will always be ranked top 5 to start the season. And if there is any way that Northern Iowa can questionably make the playoffs, they will. They did
6 and 5.
They did this year going 6 and 5. Yes, they did beat Sac State earlier in the year. That was before Sac State had figured things out, but for the resume, that is a good win. But this just fed to the joke of Northern Iowa, 6-5, not allowed to miss the playoffs.
And they
Weber
played a
State-
dome. We can beat Northern Iowa, and I would be okay with that.
Weber State
I would be
beat-
content.
Yeah,
I'm a
Weber
little
State beat
higher
Eastern.
standard, but
Had more than Weber State beat Eastern, had 7 wins, which is more than 6 last I checked. Chris, tell me if I'm wrong. And Weber was universally understood as being out of the playoffs. Of everyone, I joked about this in our thread. Of course, Northern Iowa makes it in. The surprise was they weren't seeded. I'm done interrupting you. Sorry.
yeah, no. But anyway, so let's move on. I know we'll get it out there, so I'll just let you guys get your giddies is giddier than me, Brian and Dallas. Who is your number 1 pick to be Idaho head coach? And I mean, I'm going to frame this to, obviously, we're going to keep it semi-realistic. Nick Saban is not coming to Idaho, so I hate
What are
to
you
break
talking
it,
about?
Boatman. I knew you wanted Saban.
That was Reddit
But-
college football's suggestion, right? Like that account has 250,000 followers, and they love Idaho because the Kibby Dome was a cult hero. They were like, what does Nick Saban have left to prove at Bama? Nothing. Like if he can go to Moscow and get it done in the Kibby Dome, then he's the greatest of all time. Until that, no. he's
I'm
not.
sure you guys saw this. Just a small plug for the work Brian and Dallas did today. Did you guys see Reddit College Football on Thursday? Their comment about the Paul news? Great. I'm so glad I get to share this with you. I'm not a big Reddit guy, so it got showed to me. But it literally said the Vandal football coach being fired story being broke by a website named after the most famous bar in Moscow is the most Idaho thing of all time. So we were, and that was not FCS Reddit. That was Reddit College Football.
250,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah, we got a little bit of a trend there from that. And I did chuckle out loud when I saw that. I said, that is spot on. Whoever came up with that, golf clap. But I keep filibustering your guys' coach search. Obviously, it's Mark Farley.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you and I, head coach Mark Farley, no question. Dallas, I'll let you go first.
So for me, we've obviously been joking about this for about 2 years now, but it's the exact same person that I wanted to get the job when Akey was fired. Bo Baldwin is the top person on the list for me. The guy has proven that he knows what to do with Big Sky football. And obviously the Cal Poly thing is not starting off incredibly well. I also don't think that anybody, I think Nick Saban would have a little bit of a tough time going to Cal Poly and turning that program around. That is a tough thing to do. It is so hard to get into. It's a beautiful location. I mean, I would love to live in SLO, but it's so much harder to win there than it's going to be for really anywhere. And I talked about Idaho being a hard job. Idaho is a breeze compared to Cal Poly. And I'd love to see it. If there's any chance you can raise the money to bring him over from Cal Poly, I think you have to do it. Bring in a guy who has won a national championship at this level. There's not a whole lot of them out there.
Let's go get Casey Kaler. Brian, are you going to echo the Baldwin, or are you going to kind of? I mean, obviously, Baldwin is obviously a guy I think every Idaho fan should be excited if we were able to get. But
Would you be excited, Chris? What would we have to do to get you excited?
Of course. I would love if we got him. Now, is he on my short list? No. But am I going to be ecstatic if we get him? Of course, because I do agree with Dallas. I think there's a little bit more between the lines here of like, I do agree that the Cal Poly thing is incredibly hard, especially when you're taking that offensive system they ran and trying to move it into, his kind of spread no huddle thing. That being said, Georgia Tech is not struggling with it nearly as much and have same recruiting.
Nope.
How many wins has Georgia Tech had in the last
Georgia
2
Tech's not ready to
seasons?
fire their coach, honestly.
But he's won 5 conference games in the ACC. Bo Baldwin won one in the Big Sky. But I'm saying like same kind of recruiting aspects. Like you have to be uber smart. So I'm not saying he wouldn't succeed at Idaho, but I would say that you talk about a hard job. Hard job would also be Northern Colorado, and objectively, Ed McCaffrey has done a better job stepping in there in 1 season and turning that program around than Bo Baldwin has with 2 in Cal Poly. So I do think Bo Baldwin would be a successful coach. I do think he'd be a good hire. I'm just not convinced, like most people, that if we hire him, a national title is coming. So maybe it's like set your standards where they are. Maybe it is that we just become Northern Iowa. I do think we'd finish a lot better than 6-5 normally, but I don't think Bo Baldwin is going to get us back to a national title. I think you saw with Eastern later in his career, like they were very good. And I know they lost on some BS kind of like you couldn't even write it up for movie script stuff. At the end of the day, he never got back to Frisco. So, like, could we be good? Absolutely. But I have higher standards than Northern Iowa, is my take on it. I think Bo Baldwin would be a step forward. I just think there's some bigger jumps we could take, in my opinion.
So I'm going to answer this question, and this, of course, is the dream but reasonable dream scenario, right, Chris?
Yes, like please don't give me Pete Carroll.
Right, and also
He
for
might be out of a job.
listeners, hey, for listeners, if we reference a name right now, that doesn't mean we have any information that he's.
Oh hell no, this is all speculation.
Yeah, no. For me, honestly, it is either Bo Baldwin or Bo Baldwin. Good God, Brian, or Troy Taylor. Troy Taylor at Sac State. I don't think there's an actual prayer because his contract is gigantic. He signed a 7-year deal, so I don't know what the money to get him out would be, and that's presuming he would want to. I think he's a Northern California guy anyway. But the reason why is both guys have been successful wherever they've been, for the most part, as head coaches. Baldwin, it's a turnaround job, so I understand it differently. But as head coaches, he was objectively one of the most successful coaches in the history of the Big Sky Conference. But he took Paul Wolf's work in creating stability at Eastern and took it to a level Paul Wolf sure as hell didn't touch.
Fact.
So absolutely ecstatic if it's Bo Baldwin. Troy Taylor also would be a fantastic guy. He reputationally is very smart as a coach. He's been flexible as hell at Sacramento State in doing whatever that team needs to win. He's also been a guy who can get his team both to score and play defense. So either of those names would be cool. Although, as a joke, Chris, I would kill for Jeff Choate, and I would love making fun of the R&R CatCast guys about how Choate left for the greener pastures in Moscow, Idaho. I would love the Choate worshipers in Montana State to have to square the circle of like, hey, guys, not only did he leave you guys, he came to Moscow. How you liking that? Choate doesn't have his teams play the style that I like the most, but honestly, Choate would be kick-ass at engaging the fan base. That absolutely matters for this job right now, and he's won, so I cheated and gave you 3 answers, Chris.
But now I'm curious. If it came down to it and they're like hiring committee, Brian Marceau, we have all these guys committed to the exact same deal, exact same years, and the money is raised. Who are you? If you go, Terry Golick, Scott Green, I am so glad you called me for this because the answer to your question is
Bo Baldwin. I like the style. I like the game style. It's dumb. Like it might be dumb because it might not. Like Jeff Choate actually might be better for the Big Sky right now because he built a defensive oriented team and he was still able to have a good offense without having a quarterback who can throw it more than half a yard. But I will be supportive of whoever the new coach is, no question. But my dream scenario is we land a good coach who plays a fun style. That's why I say Bo Baldwin.
Yeah, Dallas, it looks like you kind of nodded similar.
Completely agree. I would personally love Baldwin just because I watched that for years covering TV. I think it's fun. I saw it, unfortunately, end in the semifinals way too many times. It would be a blast. But again, I will be happy if it's any of those names. And I'm sure even if it's somebody that we're not going to discuss here, I'm in full support, obviously, until the results are out.
Boatman, kind of between those 3, would you have a favorite? Because those are probably our biggest reaches, right? Of like realistic reaches.
I don't know. Like, this is tough. I mean, so personally, I've heard names thrown around that I'm not going to say on here because
and we'll get to more picks later. I'm more about these 3 is like
these 3. Well,
as
my
like
real
reaches.
answer is.
Oh, we'll go into more.
Well, no, but my real answer is it's like a branch off of Troy Taylor in terms of realism.
We'll get to him then too. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Between Choate, Baldwin, Troy Taylor, that's a tough because personally, who do I want? I don't want actually any of those guys. Actually, to be honest with you guys, I don't think Choate's ever going to happen. I think
he's too prideful. He is undefeated against Montana, and I don't think he would risk that because he is an ego guy. And though he can say that was at Idaho, that was at Montana State, I think he does care about how he's perceived in Montana State. I think he
Yes.
loves that he is like a folk hero that will forever be a folk hero in Bozeman.
I also still think he has a vendetta against the University of Idaho, like from not being recruited
when he was in
this
high
guy.
school.
Like this guy's held this personally for like 20 to 30 years, and he's from St. Mary's, right?
Yeah, and he had to go to Montana Western.
So he went to NAIA instead of FCS. So it's not like he then went to Montana State. So but he's talked bad about. He's not talked bad, but he has never held his feelings back about his opinion on the University of Idaho. I just wouldn't be a Choate guy. I don't know enough about Troy Taylor other than what he's done at Sac State the last couple of years, which is remarkable to me. And I think Bo Ball was my answer because like A, tied to the area, B, has been not attached or expressed interest in this job in the past, but like I don't think it was out within the realm of like we know that he wasn't ever going to take the job in 2013, but like it's not like he's ever really have a vendetta against Idaho, some attachment to the area. He has the best head coaching record of any of them, even with in factoring his Cal Poly stuff, right? So yeah, I'm going to go damaged goods. That's my answer. I had to think through this. I just would not be a Choate guy. I don't think. Troy Taylor, not much attachment there, so I'm going to go Bo Baldwin.
Can I throw back to Bowman for 10 seconds, Chris?
Yeah,
I just have one question.
100%.
Jeff Choate interviewed for the Idaho job in 2012 when he was coaching at WSU. I don't know what people are talking about him having an Idaho vendetta other than he once uttered what is honestly outside of University of Idaho alum circles conventional wisdom that when we were FBS, we should have been Big Sky. I know a lot of people don't like that. But I'm commenting on the fact of what people outside of Idaho think. That is not a controversial statement whatsoever to anyone who is not directly at the University of Idaho. Is there something else you're talking about with the
when I say vendetta, it's this that he's always like he's a big ego guy, right? Like I don't like
he's
his
only
ego.
Coached at our rivals, so like he said some stuff at Boise State. But obviously,
he said things when he's at Boise State. He said that he interviewed for the job. I just don't like his personality, and I think he would leave us for the next. But in terms of like, he would just leave us if he turned it around 2 years, he'd be gone again, right? Like he would leave right away. So that's part of the answer is he loves himself so much and loves who he is so much, which is fine. It's got him this far. It's just that I don't think I would. I mesh with that, and I don't like it. He's just like he seems like a egotistical guy who thinks he's right and is always trying to find the next big thing to do. And I think he fit well with Montana State for the time he was there, but like he was always going to leave. Like if you would rather have would you rather have a Bobby Houck style coach who's been there forever and always has them winning, or would you rather have Choate who's shot him up like this but then left right away? Like I would take Bobby Houck all day, every day. So anyway,
I'm a Troy to wrap this part up. I'm a Troy Taylor. And that might shock people because I'm definitely a Choate Menem guy. But I agree. I think Choate would be here for a minimal of a couple of years, where Troy Taylor is a bit old. Like you might be able to get him to stick around. Plus, Choate is literally, we joke about it all the time, our deep dives into his actual coaching ability. He is best known for being undefeated against Montana, and has had very little success outside of beating Montana. I know they have a couple playoff wins to point to, but like at the end of the day, he never got them to the mountain. It's kind of my worry with like Baldwin is like, it's the same. I got to throw the same kind of stuff at Choate. Like, yeah, he was fun and awesome, but like at the same time, he never got them to the mountain, where at least Baldwin did. Choate is actually probably my 3 out of those guys. So which will shock some people, because I'm a Choate guy.
There is a little context there. I mean, Boat's right that Choate we could expect to leave if there was a turnaround. Choate got them to a semifinal, man. I mean, that is a pretty dang good. How happy would we be? And how many years would we be referencing like, hey, Idaho made a semifinal if we made a semifinal? That's you're right. There was no championship for sure, but not that many guys outside of North Dakota State right now win championships in the FCS. So like, if that's the criteria for being good or having a great season, like we've defined it out of existence for essentially everyone but North Dakota State.
Well, we'll see. Sam
That's
Houston
my problem.
seems to be there.
That's my problem with FCS. Anyway,
let's go real quick down like former players. Obviously, you've got Scott Linehan, who's an offensive analyst at Missouri. You've got Doug Nussmeier. You've got Joel Thomas. He's been thrown around a bit. Do either of those three, and see if I might be missing one. I mean, I guess
Casey
Reeder's
Dunn.
probably in there. Casey Dunn, at Oklahoma State.
I don't think you can mention Reeder. Like, just to be honest with you,
Yeah, he's
that's not even worth. There's a lot of names that you're going to shout here. They're probably not even be worth a shout because of who I've heard might be interested in this job. So anyway, continue on.
But like I would say, so out of former Vandal players that are currently coaching, do any of them, get you all giddy, or are we kind of like, I'm glad they were part of our alma mater. Ooh, Dallas has won. I'm excited because none of them do it for me really.
I giddy about how much hatred I would have for my life if Scott Linehan was named the coach here. I watched the Rams under Scott Linehan. They went from greatest show on turf to kind of mediocre, okay, into leading into the worst 5 years in the history of the NFL. The NFL is different than college, but Scott Linehan would make me giddy about how much content we'd have for the people that were unhappy with Petrino, because it would only be tripled down. Like, it'd be great for Tubbs shows. We'd have crazy levels of viewership. As an actual hire, I would hate it, but I'd be giddy about that.
Nick Saban, Bob Petrino. I'm just saying, like, it's like you say, it's a different game. He hasn't been in college. Like, this is his first 2 years in college since like 2000. So, and also everyone's going to point to, well, his passing coordinator job at LSU, which was held by Joe Brady before. LSU has shitty quarterbacks, like extremely shitty quarterback play.
Ooh, there's one that we would love if he transferred.
Well, but I'm saying in terms of like, they went from Joe Burrow, which is maybe the greatest college season of all time, to I don't even know who their quarterback was last year for the most part. Like, it is like it was a recipe for disaster to be Scott Linehan at LSU in 2020. But anyway, Chris, can I take this real quick? So I'd be giddy for all four, right? Like, okay. So here's I'll kind of break it down. Scott Linehan, obviously, it's Idaho's most famous coaching alumnus who's a coach, right? Like, there is no one more famous who's been an Idaho Vandal. You can maybe say Tom Cable, I guess, in terms of right now, who played at the University of Idaho, right? Like, there's no one more famous who's played at U of I who has gone on to have a coaching career. You'd say Dennis Erickson's more famous than Scott Linehan potentially in college, but he never played here. Yeah. So Brian Lindgren, I would love Brian Lindgren.
Yeah, Lindgren.
Right. Brian Lindgren's fantastic. What he's been able to, like, he's been in the Big Sky. Okay. So after he left Idaho, he was at University of Redlands, which is like a D3 or D2 in Cali. Then he was at NAU for quite a few years. Then he moved up to Colorado as part of Mike McIntyre's staff and ended up being promoted to OC. Then he left and he's been Jonathan Smith's OC for the last few years and was not sure who called the plays. Jonathan Smith actually answered this in a press conference recently. Brian Lindgren calls the plays, and look at how good Oregon State's been doing these last couple of years. Like,
they could win the Pac-12 with a win this weekend.
Oregon State can still win the Pac-12 North, right? Like, it's wild. Well, they need Wazoo to lose too. Anyway. But so he's been calling the plays in the Pac-12 for quite a few years and only been improving. I think his name is going to be on the list for bigger OC jobs or maybe a group of 5 head coach in the next few years if we don't have a chance to snatch him now. I'm not saying he takes it, but still, good name and I think good organizational skills.
He has too much upward trajectory, in my opinion. Like, he is young enough to where he knows he does not need to make this jump now.
But I'm saying it depends, right? Like, the people will always argue, like, why would Lindgren do this? Why would so-and-so do this, right? You never know what someone does for the alma mater. You never know what someone wants to do for their first head coaching job. Like, it's Troy Taylor leaving Utah to go to Sac State. Like, that's a weird transition. But I'm just saying, like, you never know what someone does for their alma mater, and you never know what someone does for their first head coaching job. Depends on time, and he's from Walla Walla. You just never know. Joel Thomas, he's someone who interviewed back in 2012 for this job. I would love Joel. It's insane how much I would love Joel here. And in Casey Dunn's name doesn't get mentioned much. He's the OC at Oklahoma State. He's a top 10 team in the country. Played here, coached here. I would love Casey Dunn. I love all 4 of them. Who knows if that's going to happen, but I would just love all 4.
Brian and Dallas, since I think you both are going to have to hop up.
Yeah, I got to hop off, guys. I'm going to co-sign what Boatman just said on Lindgren, Dunn, or Joel Thomas. All those guys would be exciting as hell to me. The big thing that I'm going to have as my final takeaway, and I'm going to jump topics on just because I'm leaving, guys, is if we can get a guy with Vandal connections, that's cool. Good God, I hope that's not a prerequisite. I just want us to take the best guy who's available. We should be looking at Vandal connections, because as far as putting together a reasonable list of people who might be and we should be excited about, there will be Vandals included on there. Absolutely no question. But I think fans need to be ready to find out that their next head coach doesn't necessarily have Vandal connections in the same way that we honestly hear people talk about all the time. We need to get someone who's good and willing to take it. And Joel Thomas would be great. Lindgren, man, I would be ecstatic. Lindgren honestly might be over Beau Baldwin for me about actual excitement. Beau Baldwin's just a little bit more familiar because he has Big Sky familiarity. But we've seen teams in the Big Sky snag coordinators who do great. Brent Vegan has done great. He's not Pac-12, but like Brent Vegan has done great as a coordinator. Troy Taylor was Utah offensive coordinator before he came to Sac State. He's done great. Didn't have head coaching experience at collegiate level. Didn't matter. He knew what he was doing, and it worked. And if Idaho can snag a guy like that, I don't care if they're connected to the university. Good Lord, honestly, this is going to be a hot take. I don't care if their connection's Boise State. If the guy is good and they're willing to come here, we need to care about getting someone who gets wins. That's how we rehab the program. Thanks, everyone, for coming in. Thanks for letting me filibuster a handful of times. I'll see y'all on Tuesday.
See you, Brian.
See you, Brian.
Hammer?
So I'm going to bounce out of here, too. I personally think that Casey Dunn is my favorite of the names I've heard there. But I questioned, would Casey Dunn come for this job? I mean, like Boat said, you never know with the alma mater, but Oklahoma State has looked really good this year. He's obviously, if he stays there for another year or two, he's looking at a Group 5 job or maybe even a cruddy P5 job. Like, you never know with the alma mater. So that's where a lot of this is speculation. I'm going to guess a lot of the stuff we talk about isn't even going to be, if they do release a list of finalists, I'm going to guess that we're going to get one or two of them, and the rest are going to be guys that we had never even discussed. Maybe Chris's piece online will have some more of those names, but I am excited. I'm not as deep into it as you two are, so I am really looking forward to listening to the rest of this and hearing the extra names you two throw in. But guys, it's coaching season or coaching searching season, which is a lot of fun. So
and
anybody that's not
short.
paying attention, that's the other thing. It's gotta be fast. So I would expect 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe tops.
Oh, 3 might be a flirted too long. I'm expecting probably 14 to 16
Conference
days.
championship week at the FBS level. I would hope to see that's when you start. Also, because that's when
unless
guys
we're poaching a
FBS
coordinator.
wrap up. I'm saying that's when guys also wrap up. So expect to see this happen 3 weeks. Within 3 weeks, Dallas is what I would say to keep an eye. Within 3 weeks, this should be solved.
Love it.
Cool. All right,
luck,
Dallas.
guys.
Thanks. And so I guess my